Not just a review today, it's story time. Alright, this is the way huge Red Llama Overdrive Mark III. Before we get into the story, because I have something of a dubious history with the Red Llama pedal. Before we get into that, we'll talk a little bit about it. This is a classic pedal from the 90s. The Way Huge was, for those of you that don't know, was kind of a boutique-y company in the 90s, started in 1992, so this is the 30th anniversary. The Red Llama being one of the first notable pedals, and in fact was played by Tom Petty. It's based on a famous circuit by Craig Anderton called the Tube Sound Fuzz. It's inspired by that. It's a very raucous, raw, powerful, hairy kind of drive that borders on fuzz. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but it's very amp-like, like actually amp-like, because when a lot of amps, particularly tweed amps, and this has kind of a tweedy thing going, when they break up, it's not nearly as smooth as most overdrive pedals are. It's much more chaotic, and there's, you know, this kind of audio artifacts going places, and there can be fizziness, and there can be hairiness, and just sort of a general fat roughness to them, as opposed to just the sort of silky smooth, you know, lightly compressed overdrive pedals like we sometimes think of. This is a great pedal. This is the Mark III. Now, George Tripps, the designer, has actually himself said in a Premier Guitar interview that he prefers the new ones because even though the old ones have become very sought after for being rare, he said he's perfected the circuits with these. Now, this is the new Smalls one. There was also one that was out a while ago, the Mark II, which is the one that I had, and then there was an anniversary one. All in all, this is a really unique pedal, really cool tones if you know how to use it. Now let's get to the story. I've never shared this story publicly before. And this is something that I don't really talk about that often, but I was a finalist in Guitar Center's 2013 Bluesmasters competition. It was a national competition that was done online, and I think it was the first one that was done online, moving on from when they used to do the contests in the store and then moving up to regionals. This was all online. It was featuring Joe Bonamassa. I got to be one of the top 10 finalists out of about 2,500 entries, and I got to go out to California, to Los Angeles, and play with Joe and his band at the Mint in LA. It was a big final thing. Now, we had to bring our own guitar, and we could bring our own effects, but we used their amp setup. It was sponsored by Marshall, so we had a choice between a DSL-40 and the Bluesbreaker. Pretty obvious choice to go with the Bluesbreaker. Oddly enough, I almost wish I had gone with the DSL-40, so I had some reverb. We'll get to that in a minute. The two pedals that I brought were my Red Llama Mark II and my Full-Tone Plimsoll, and I had it set up specifically with the drive way back and the volume up a bit to give myself a little bit of a boost. And what it does, this pedal does beautifully with humbuckers, is it almost gives you like a fat B.B. King tone. There's like a hint of that jazzy warmth to it. Like, you ever hear a great jazz tone that has a little bit of overdrive on it? Or again, like that kind of classic B.B. King tone? This pedal does that really, really nicely. With single coils, it kind of sounds good all the time. I really like this pedal with single coils better. The slenderness of the single coils, I think, suits the fatness of the pedal. With humbuckers, it's much more finicky. Now, I was using a Gibson SG, one of my favorite SGs. My wife bought it for me as a combination present for my birthday and a Father's Day present when she was pregnant with our first child a long time ago. So I had it set up. If I do say so myself, at soundcheck, I absolutely killed it. Except for one really bad note that I'll never forget. But other than that, I killed it in soundcheck. It was going to be great. I was using this for the first part to give me that kind of like slightly fat, warm jazziness, and then I kicked on the Plimsoll, and the tone together into the Bluesbreaker was sort of like halfway between Joe himself and David Gilmour. It was just this sweet, thick singing lead that I absolutely loved. What we didn't know is that Joe was actually going to be on stage with us. I call him Joe like I really know him. I just barely met him there. Anyway, I finally get to the final performance. It's late at night, and for me, not only did I have a 2-month-old baby at this point at home, but it was also late at night in LA time, which is 3 hours behind my time, so super late at night. So I'm exhausted, a little strung out, and very nervous, to be totally honest. The rep from Marshall's like sitting like right in front of me on the stage. Now we had no monitors. It was kind of a plug and slug sort of situation. And I start playing, and all of a sudden I go, because my tone is really way too loud, really fat and slightly flubby, and just had this dry crunch that was not a good thing. So I looked down at my Red Llama MkIII, and the drive knob is about right there. And I had a split second to figure out what I was going to do. Now, what I did was I just rolled with it, and I did my best. Looking back, it's easy to say I should have done something else. Why didn't I roll the volume back? There's actually a reason for that. It was before I completely gutted that SG and put in different pickups and things. And that was a mid-2000s SG with all stock wiring and pickups. And if any of you know those guitars, if you roll the volume back, you don't get that nice cleaned up sound. You get like a muffly, dull kind of sound. So that wasn't really an option. I didn't want to get down and tweak all the knobs because actually something jumped into my head that my father told me, who used to do seminars, as he said, even if something's not your fault, if something goes technically wrong, it always reflects poorly on the performer. And that jumped into my head, and I thought, you know, pedal knobs can be so finicky volume-wise, and because we didn't have monitors, all I knew was that it was way too loud. I didn't know exactly how loud it was or how I could get this to where I wanted it. So I just rolled with it. And I didn't kick on my plimsoll when I wanted to because I thought that would just like blow the walls off the house. So unfortunately what wound up happening was I tensed up, I clammed up, I got really tight, and I did my best. I tried to do my best, but it was not a great performance. I'm reluctantly going to link to that performance right here. It's on Guitar Center's YouTube page. I didn't bomb, but it wasn't very good. So right now I do want to mention, any of you have any like bad on stage experiences like this, feel free to let us know in the comments. I'm sure we've all had some sort of situation where something went horribly wrong on stage. For me, I was just totally mortified that it happened in my one opportunity to play with Joe Bonamassa and his band in Los Angeles. Did the best that I could. Now, I will say one thing that many of you have written in comments on my videos before. You've said a great compliment to me, which I really appreciate, which is, you know, it's something to the effect of, well, hey, Jack can make anything sound good. I will tell you how much I appreciate that because I know it's not true. And let me tell you, that night on that stage, I could not make that tone sound good. Swung for the fences and missed. And I actually did leave kind of heartbroken from it. I was very, very blessed to have that opportunity, but it took me a while to really kind of appreciate just that the opportunity itself, you know, was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and I should sort of let all that go. I do want to be clear, too. I'm not griping. I'm not kind of... I don't intend it this way. I don't intend it to be like, well, if my pedal hadn't messed up... I don't mean it like that. These things happen. It's just part of my musical history and something that I had to realize was a stepping stone in my own musical journey as opposed to a defining moment. So let us know in the comments, what do you have with those sorts of experiences? Do you have anything that's happened where you were mortified, where you had to do your best to make do with something? Please let us know. Now, that being said, this is a great pedal. It's raw and it's powerful, and sometimes it's a little untamable. So again, you have to know how to use it. When you use it in its right context, it sings, it screams, it roars. It's totally awesome. When I came back from Los Angeles, I wound up getting rid of that pedal because I just kind of always looked at it with resentment. I mean, it wasn't the pedal's fault, it was the circumstance, but I wish I still had it. I wish I hadn't done that, and I've actually looked into getting a Mark II again for nostalgic sort of purposes. Unfortunately, because the Mark IIs aren't around anymore, you know, reverb sellers want stupid amounts of money for them, as is the norm in today's gear world. But the Mark III, when that came out, it's the 30th anniversary, and now it's been, you know, as of like right now, as of a couple of days ago, it's been 9 years since Bluesmasters, so I've pretty well moved on from those. I mean, unless you're watching this video next year, you get what I mean. Anyway, to recreate what I'm talking about, I'm going into my Bluesbreaker, which I got later. Now this one I think actually sounds better than the one I had on stage. This one is loaded with ToneSpeak speakers, which just sound superb. And I'm going to use the same guitar, that same Gibson SG for the next part. That one also, though, has been gutted. It has 50 style wiring with better pots and caps, and it has Lust for Tone 61 Lustbuckers, which just sound beautiful. So the guitar is a little different, the amp's a little different, but it is the same setup. And I'm going to show you both the tones, both the tone that I wound up with, the tone that I actually wanted, so you can hear the difference. And I think even with the sort of improved rig and with a little reverb that I'm getting from MkIII Caverns, it's still not necessarily the best pedal for humbuckers in a lot of settings, but you can make it work. So you'll hear it. And we're still going to do a full run through. I'm just going to point out the settings that I talked about here. But let us know in the comments, what do you think? What are your stories? And what's your experience with the Red Llama? Again, really, really cool pedal. So I don't want to come across like I'm disparaging the pedal, because it can be totally awesome, especially when you roll your volume back, you know, almost use it like a fuzz face or something like that. It just sounds superb, and I really dig this. I like the way huge smalls, they're cool little enclosures and things. So I'm Jack Fossett. Share your stories in the comments. Stick around for some more tone. Hope you enjoy the rest of the video.